The 49ers collective is back. Sort of. What's up? Welcome to a show I'm calling 11 Personnel, the only show on YouTube where fullbacks are not freaking allowed. And today I'm at the X. I think Ashley would be at the Z, and it looks like Chase is in the slot. How you guys doing?
Doing awesome.
Really good.
All right, OTA start on Thursday. It looked like they probably started today, but media will be allowed to watch on Thursday. And I mean, OTAs are interesting because there's a lot to look at, and there's 90 players out there. If you were there, what would interest you most about this event? What are you looking for at OTAs? Whoever wants to go can go.
Ashley, you got it.
Can I ask you a question first? Why aren't you, so is the media like the 49ers only have to let them in for one day? Like, why
The way I
aren't you
understand it is I think they
covering the whole thing?
practice 3 days a week, but the NFL mandates that you only have to allow the media to be there 1 day a week, and the teams generally do the minimum.
Okay, interesting. Because
Yeah.
it'd be fun to like actually get a feel, especially with so many young guys, how the practice is every single day versus just one day. Aside from how do the rookies look, I think it's going to be most interesting looking at the second year players. Ricky Pearsall is a guy. He's going to really have to step up with Brandon Ayuk not being able to start the season. They signed a wide receiver, but I think he's suspended, so he's also not going to start the season. So Ricky, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him this year. Jacob Cowing, is he going to be competing with the Jordan Watkins guy? They have similar body types, similar skill sets. So I really think the second year players, I'm going to be I would like you to keep an eye out. And then Robert Saleh's there. So what is he paying attention to? Who is he looking at? Who is he coaching up? What position group is he standing by? Is he standing by Kyle? So coaches and second year players, maybe for me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing all these rookies because I think there's a real chance that 5 of them on the defensive side of the ball could start. Mykel Williams, CJ West, Alfred Collins, Upton Stout, and Nick Martin. And so all those players have a lot of experience at the college level. They could be asked to play a huge role for San Francisco in 2025. And I just want to know if they're ready to seize that type of role right from the jump. And then number 2, Christian McCaffrey and his health. Everything that we've heard out of Santa Clara is that he looks good, he looks healthy, but is he actually? Last year with the bilateral Achilles tendonitis and then the knee injury, he only played 4 games and didn't have a touchdown. As Ashley said, can't wait to see what Ricky Pearsall looks like going into year 2. He's going to need to have a leap just because of the injury to Brandon Ayuk. Brock Purdy gets paid, so now it's time for him to really be the face of the franchise, and he's going to be criticized and watched even closer just because he's a top 10 highest paid quarterback now. So I want to see him slinging that rock. And then, Grant, you've been on this all off season, but how does Trent Williams look?
Yeah.
And is Trent Williams going to be playing a huge role for this team in 2025? Because I feel like the Niners' success offensively, it really does hinge on 2 players mostly outside of Brock Purdy rebounding from last year's up and down campaign, and that's Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey. And then the Niners coaching staff has undergone a lot of key changes. Robert Saleh is back, and then Brant Boyer is there as special teams coordinator. So those are the things that I'm really looking forward to as OTAs get underway.
It's going to be fun to watch 7-on-7s. It's going to be fun to watch Renardo Green match up man-to-man with Ricky Pearsall and Jordan Watkins. But I feel like a lot of those stuff will play out in training camp day after day. You'll get a feel for the younger guys. I guess like day 1 in OTAs, just what you guys brought up, like, what does Christian McCaffrey really look like?
Yeah.
He'll be there, but is he like going 100%? Is he in all the drills? Are the Niners being cautious with him? Is he being cautious with himself? Because it seemed like last year there were some stats that like he never really got above 17 miles an hour in a game. It's almost like he was afraid to kick it into 5th gear, or he didn't have a 5th gear anymore. Like, is it Christian or is it like old Christian at this point? I mean, can he bounce back to his what?
I want to interrupt you and pause you there because maybe our audience doesn't know. I don't know. What's that stat about how fast he's running and How what's maybe the average? Can
Sure.
he just run faster? Can
Sure.
he just run faster? I'm
Yeah. So this was in the ESPN today, written by, I believe, Ben Solak. And he said that in his 4 games last year, his top speed per game was like 16.1 and 16.4, 16 point something else. And then his top speed was 17.4, I believe, against Buffalo. And he's like, that would have been his 5th slowest top speed in 2023. I mean, football players routinely get into the 20s, the fast one. McCaffrey could do that, but he didn't last year. And he only broke 5 tackles last year. So either he is washed or he was not healthy or he was afraid to really like kick it into 5th gear. So we got to see what version of McCaffrey we got. And then Trent too, if he's there, is he practicing? Does he look healthy? How are his ankles? Because his ankles were messed up at the end of last year. Those are like just 2 attendance things. Those ones. And then Mac Jones.
The McCaffrey thing is
do his thing. I freaking love Mac Jones, guys. Are you guys excited about Mac Jones? I'm excited about Mac Jones.
I am excited to watch Mac Jones in the preseason too, because the starters aren't going to play that much. And then when Purdy does play, it'll be for a series, maybe a quarter. After that, we get to watch Mac Jones. And I actually
Hell yeah.
What he looks like with a competent offensive coaching staff. That's kind of something that you can like nerd out on as a football fan.
The thing about Mac and like every quarterback on the Niners, other than Trey Lance, it seems like if he were to start, I don't know if he'd win, but he'd probably put up like 3,800 yards and like 20 to 25 touchdown passes. I mean, I think you kind of know the production a 49ers quarterback is going to give you because it's largely tied to Kyle Shanahan's system. I'm not even a Kyle Shanahan guy, but I mean, we have 8 years of evidence. It pretty much looks the same every year unless they have the offensive player of the year at running back.
Well, he's maximized CJ Beathard. He's maximized Nick Mullins. He maximized Jimmy Garoppolo. Didn't do it with Trey Lance. We never got to see that. But I think an underlying talking point with Lance is that he attempted less than 300 passes in college, and he was 20 years old and played 1 game that COVID year before entering the NFL draft anyway. And we've also seen what Kyle Shanahan's done with Brock Purdy too. So I think that he would be able to do something similar to Mac Jones, who, by the way, was a Pro Bowler as a rookie. A lot of people forget about that too.
Don't forget that. All right, we got a couple super chats. Oh, go ahead, Ashley. I'm sorry.
When you're talking about Mac Jones in the preseason, and I know people aren't here for Mac Jones, but when we talked about rookies, we talked about the defense. It'll be interesting what is it James, the new running back that they're trying, Jordan James, the new Jordan running back. Because like you said, if Chris McCaffrey has taken a step back, we've already seen Isaac Orendo when he had to, carry the rushing yards for the 49ers, and Kyle Shanahan did not trust him to put it all on his plate. I think there's Patrick Taylor behind him. So underrated storyline, Jordan James might be extremely important this year if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt. Like, that running back room doesn't have the depth that we're used to, but I do know the fumbling thing probably was a huge reason as to why they drafted him. He didn't fumble at all in college. Kyle Shanahan loved Elijah Mitchell, and actually, how we said, makes a lot out of an average quarterback. He can get a lot out of an average running back. So how does this running back look? Does he protect the football? I'm interested in that rookie too. I just feel like when we talk about rookies, we talk about the first 5, defensive draft picks, but the offense is something I'm interested in watching this year.
And that Jordan James is going to play. I agree. Foot donates $10. Thank you very much. Foot. He says, or she, what an interesting season ahead. You can argue this first year is the most important year in Purdy's contract, which is quite unusual in a quarterback contract. If he's bad, do they draft a quarterback next year?
If he's bad, that's a disaster. Yeah. You signed him to this contract, and I like how it's structured because the Niners can get out of it after 2026. But if he's bad, I mean, you still have to pay those first few years. And that means that you made an investment in a quarterback who potentially can't play. That would not be good.
Yeah. Joseph Ernberg says CMC, BP, GK, TW are going to be bums. Blow it up. Whoa, that came out of nowhere. But thank you very much, Joseph. On that note, let's rank the top 10 players on the 49ers. I think this is a fun exercise to do right before OTAs, a sort of way to kick off the season. And no person's list is going to be the same. We might approach it differently. I'm not really looking at this as a career achievement list. I'm sort of looking at this as like right now, who do I expect to have the best seasons coming up in 2025 and why? So maybe there's a little bit of projection on my list. You guys can do it however you want to do it. And maybe Chase goes first since Ashley went first last time.
Yeah, I can go first here. And again, I think it's important to emphasize who are the best players right now, because some of the players who are marquee guys on this Niners team, they missed some time last year. And so I'm thinking more about what's relevant and how these players have played of late, how I think they're going to play in 2025. So at number one for me is Fred Warner. And I think that's an easy choice for me personally, just because he's one of the best overall players in the NFL. He's one of the best defenders in football. He's the off-ball linebacker champion at that position, because I don't think anybody really comes close to him outside of maybe Roquan Smith. And he's been to 3 straight first-team All-Pro honors. And I just think that with the way that he impacts the game against the run, against the pass, leadership, being a captain, being the backbone of that Niners defense, he's the best player on this team. And I also, when I was putting together this list, I'm thinking, how would the team fare if that player were not on it? That's how I oftentimes think about MVP races in all of the major sports, because if you take that player off that team, how does that team do? I think the Niners defense would be bad without Fred Warner. So he's number one on my list. Number two, I'm going to go with George Kittle. And it starts to get close here, but my thought process here is that Kittle is the best all-around tight end in the game. Some people want to say Brock Bowers is the best tight end. That's fine. I don't think he blocks to the level that George Kittle does. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and he was a first-team All-Pro at his position 2 years ago. And if you look at his numbers recently with what he's done with Brock Purdy, his touchdown numbers are terrific. I think he might have 24 touchdowns in like 35 games since Purdy came in 2022. And number three, Nick Bosa. And I think some people are sleeping on how good Bosa is. Oftentimes, I sometimes look at sack numbers like wins and losses for a pitcher. I don't think it tells a full story for how good that player is. And I know that Bosa's sack numbers have gone down since he won Defensive Player of the Year. But think about that Seattle game at home. Nick Bosa and the defense were dominating. Bosa was playing really well. You take him off the field, Niners sucked, and the Seahawks really did whatever they wanted to with that comeback effort. That was the Geno Smith touchdown run game. And I think Bosa is just a dynamite defensive player who is still one of the top edge rushers in the game at a position that's extremely deep. Number four is Trent Williams. Only played 10 games last year. If he was healthy, he might be number one on this list. He probably has the best Hall of Fame case among all players on this list. But last year, injured, and when he was on the field, he didn't play all that well, but he's still so dominant and one of the top offensive tackles in the game, a first-team All-Pro 2 years ago. So I went with him at number four. Number five, this might surprise some people, Brock Purdy. Top 10 quarterback in the game since he's entered the league in 2022. And given the importance of the quarterback spot, I'm going to put him there. And I also think his numbers and the overall offensive numbers last year, a lot of those numbers were top 5, top 10. So I think he's worthy of that. Number 6, Christian McCaffrey, a little bit risky, but 2 years ago, he was the offensive player of the year. That name, of course, all hinges on how healthy he is in 2025, but he's the engine that makes this Niners offense go. Number 7, Deommodore Lenoir, because I thought last year he played at a Pro Bowl, borderline all-pro level, and whether you put him in the slot or out wide, he's so good. He's given up 1 touchdown the last 3 years. Number 8, Brandon Ayuk.
It's a great stat.
All pro. Yeah, it's one touchdown 3 years when you get targeted a lot and you have to play inside outside, which isn't easy. Like Lenoir is one of the most slept on corners in the game, in my opinion. Number 8, Brandon Ayuk. Look, tore the 3 ligaments in his knee. Stock is down. When he was on the field last year, he wasn't good, but he was an all-pro at a loaded position just 2 years ago, and he was like the second highest graded wide receiver according to Pro Football Focus in football. And so if he's healthy and he can get close to his 2023 form, I think he's a top 10 player on this team. At number 9 is Jawan Jennings, career year last year, and I think he's the epitome of what the Niners are about. Play with swagger, toughness, be a dog, willing to make sacrifices for your teammates. And I think he's the most respected receiver in that room. And then at number 10 is a guy who was excellent last year as a rookie, and he was one of the top offensive linemen drafted last year, and that's Dominic Pooney. So those are my top 10 Niners right now, and I'm sure your lists are going to be a lot different, but those are the reasons why.
I like the reasons, though. Right. I don't mind disagreeing on the. I just like hearing why you differentiate players. That was very interesting and well done. Thank you, Chase.
Yeah. And that's an exercise where we could do like a very long show on that, but like, yeah, trying to elaborate on it concisely. That's the top 10 list I came up with. And I kind of had to switch a couple of players from time to time, but I'm comfortable with that list.
It's hard to make a list because you're obviously doing some projections, especially with the injuries that a lot of these players have. So like taking into account, okay, how do you think they're going to perform this year? But then what is their history? True. So I thought you did a really good job, Chase.
Appreciate
Are you going to go next, Grant?
You go. You're up.
Oh, you wanna end with a bang. I see.
Yeah.
I agree with Chase. I agree with Chase. I put Fred Warner as number 1. I think of him as the quarterback of the defense. He really runs that side of the game. His leadership, how he plays. He played through injury last year, still played like a top linebacker in the NFL, even through injury. It's his first I think he's missed one game his entire since he was drafted in 2018. His leadership, I think, is why I put him as number 1, because I was toying between Fred Warner and Kittle, and I think both are hugely impactful on the field. They're all pro players for a reason. They're top of their position for a reason. But I think when it comes to Fred Warner, he's like, if you're the team, if you're the organization, he's exactly the type of player you want. He's such a model citizen outside of the game of football. And he often on his own podcast has talked about how he's coached up Jair Brown and kind of like assisted in his sleep regimen to make sure that he's ready to go on game days. He talked about how on the bye week he doesn't travel because he wants to use that time to rehab and, like, yes, a little bit step away like mentally to clear his head, but he doesn't want to get all the way out of it. It's not the off season him. And that's kind of how I made my distinction, is mostly the off the field actions that these two players have, because I was really going back and forth with Kittle and Fred Warner. And Kittle, during the bye week, he'll go and he'll party and have fun, and that could be really necessary for him to then come back, lock in for the rest of the season, lock in for a playoff run. But I think there's just something so committed about Fred Warner that it's so extremely impressive to watch. Like, it's not enough for him to work hard to be great. He wants to be great in his bones. He's talked about how the only thing left for him is to win a Super Bowl and be a part of making a team around him better. Also, when it comes to contracts, like, there's so much drama that was happening with everyone with their contracts. Fred Warner, he was talking like right before at his football camp. Jennifer Lee Chan went there and asked him, like, how do you feel about the contracts? You look at George Kittle, for example. You look at Debo. You look at Brandon Ayuk. They kind of made a little bit of a stink. And I'm not downing the fact that they had to do that. But Fred Warner was like, man, I get paid enough. I trust the front office. I think they're going to take care of me. I want to help take care of them. Like, I want to stick to football. Just love that.
He's like a once in a generation leader and football player.
Yes. So
okay, who's number 2
is Kittle, because I think, top of his position. I think the impact he makes on this team, particularly, also the fact that Shanahan doesn't like to invest in the offensive line. They use Kittle as a pseudo offensive lineman when they need him to. He's pivotal to their run game. And when they do get him involved in the pass game, which I hope that they do more this year with the acquisition of Luke Farrell, who's more of a blocking tight end, when they've targeted him in the red zone last year and years prior, they've really struggled in that red zone. When they target Kittle, he has such a big body, such a large wingspan. He can really get the ball and he can plow through other players. He's not getting stopped. I think he's just so physically imposing. And maybe mindset wise, he's different than Fred Warner, who's more serious. But I also imagine that there's something to the goofiness and to the lightheartedness that he brings, and I imagine that that is also really helpful as a leader on this team. And when you're down stressed at the very end of the fourth quarter and you need to come back, and George Kittle's just pumping you up. Uh, I think about him pumping Jake Moody up when Debo was trying to hit him.
Number
So
three.
then number 3, I have Trent. I know that Trent suffered with injuries. I think going into this year, if the 49ers are going to be successful, that offensive line has to hold up for Brock Purdy, has to hold up for Chris McCaffrey, especially if he's still dealing with that injury and that speed issue. The offensive line is going to be even more important. So I think Trent Williams, future Hall of Famer, he needs to be a top 5 player on this team. And I think when healthy, he's top 3. Then I have Chris McCaffrey, similar. I When the 49ers solved their red zone issues in 2023, it was because they went and got Christian McCaffrey. They were struggling before him with Jimmy Garoppolo, and they kind of turned their entire season around using him as a key to stop to confusing defenses. Whenever defensive coordinators are asked, how are you going to stop the 49ers? They talk about Christian McCaffrey before they talk about anyone else. I'm going to listen to opposing defensive coordinators and say Christian McCaffrey's important, even coming off this injury. Supposedly he's healthy. I hope that he's utilized in a better way, but he should be important. Then I have Nick Bosa. I think with the acquisition of these younger guys who are number 5, Nick Bosa. Is that what you're saying? That's when I have Nick Bosa. When I think about the fact that they went out and got a lot of run stoppers, I think, okay, this is going to allow Nick Bosa to be even more productive because he can really narrow in on what he is, best at. And he has other people around him that are hopefully going to be able to corral him and allow him to get more sacks and maybe have those numbers go back up because he's going to have more people on that line that are going to assist him in what he needs to do. So I think Nick Bosa, when he's locked in, when he's motivated, very important on this team. That's when I have Brock Purdy. I know it's a little bit high, but when he can execute, when he can make accurate decisions and give, his offensive talent a chance, the quarterback has to be effective, has to be he has to be playing well in order for the team to do well. You can have a great running back, you can have a great defense. At some point, your quarterback is going to have to make plays. We actually saw that kind of negatively on Brock Purdy last year, where in the fourth quarter of multiple games down, Brock Purdy couldn't make that gotta have it play. The year prior, he was making more of those plays. So which version of him we're going to get this year, I'm not sure. But if the 49ers are going to be successful, and I'm optimistic and think they will be, Brock Purdy needs to be playing like a top 10, player on this team. After him, I have Deommodore Lenoir. Obviously his play on the field, but I also would say his leadership is underrated. He's always on social media building up his teammates. I think in the locker room he's been said to, really be talking up his teammates. He'll also kind of instigate things with other teams, which I kind of like. I think he has this mindset where he has a ton of self-belief and projects a ton of belief in his team and in his teammates, which I think is really important. So I think Lenore is also like underrated, a good leader, not only just him on the field. After that, I have Juwan Jennings. I think Jennings, has shown in the biggest moments that he's going to play better. He's going to rise to the occasion. He's not going to shrink. There's some guys when the bright lights come on, you can't count on them. Jennings is the opposite. If it's fourth down, if it's third down, third and Juwan, if it's third down, you're going to throw to Juwan. If it's the Super Bowl and your star wide receivers aren't showing up for some reason or they're hurt or whatever, you can all of a sudden just start targeting Juwan. And he's stayed ready, even though he's not maybe used to that production. He's always ready and always ready to prove himself. I know Kyle and Brock have both giggled about how he kind of blacks out when he comes to games and he's just ready to perform at the top of his level. I think Juwan is underrated. He's a great number 2. They're going to need an excellent wide receiver, and they're going to need Juwan to be healthy and open, especially when other, defensive backs are covering other players because they're kind of overlooking him. He can really bite you. I think that's really important. After that, and this is going to be difficult because he's injured, but I had Malik Mustafa. I just thought and maybe it's too early. I know he's only had 1 year, but I felt like he made such an impact. The 49ers, they move off of Hufanga. They're gonna need Malik Mustafa to come back and be a top 10 player. So I had Malik Mustafa there. I really liked his attitude, especially losing Dre Greenlaw. You kind of don't have that guy who's like pushing the line, and you saw a little bit of that in Malik Mustafa, which I liked. You want to have one of those guys on your defense. So I felt like with the loss of Dre Greenlaw, you need to see Malik Mustafa being that line stepper.
So Chase, you had Brock at 6.
Mm-hmm.
Chase, you had Brock at 4?
I had Brock at 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my list. You guys both had Warner at 1. I'm going to go with Kittle at 1. And the only reason I'm trying to, it's hard. They're both future Hall of Famers. To me, Kittle has no weaknesses. And he's actually almost held back. Like, imagine if he got to play with Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes. He's played Brock's good, but I think his numbers could be even greater if he had another quarterback or a play caller who was more committed to calling plays for him. So
that's his whole career too.
Yeah. He has no weaknesses. And then with Fred's great too, but like he's way better in coverage than he is against the run. And I think he really benefited from Dre Greenlaw. But I don't want to say anything too disparaging against Fred because he's a great player as well. So those are my 1 and 2 in that order. And it's almost 1A, 1B really, but I'm going to go Kittle 1, Warner 2. I'm going to go Bosa 3 just because I feel like Trent's getting a little old. I feel like Trent doesn't even practice anymore. Bosa should be able to get the best of Trent in ways that he couldn't 3-4 years ago. Even though I feel like Bosa isn't quite the player he was before he signed his contract, the numbers still say he's like a good pass rusher. Like his pass rush win rate, it's all very high. So he's in his prime. Bosa? He is what he is. He kind of is a little bit of a freelancer when it comes to rushing the quarterback. I don't even know if they know which side he's going to like line up on. He just kind of decides I'm going the right side this time, and everyone else reacts. But yeah, third, Trent 4th. Like with Trent, the question is him like, does he still want to play football? And even if he doesn't want to play football, he's still like the 4th best player. Even if he's completely disinterested, he's still one of the best players in the league, which makes him kind of incredible. Question is how many games will he play? But when he's out there, he's going to be elite, borderline. So I think we can all kind of agree on the top 4. I think it gets subjective after that. So
really quick,
yeah.
I feel like both of you had Nick Bosa a position higher than I had him. And I almost feel like you've changed my mind with how you talked about him and Trent. Nick Bosa's 27. He actually can still be on the ascension. Like,
oh yeah.
I think we think of him, or I think of him as a little bit older because he's been good for so long and he's gone through major injuries in the past. But actually, like, if he has good health, he can play for many more years and only get better, especially if the talent around him gets better. Where even if Trent is healthy, there's nothing against him. He's on the, decline of his career just based on his age. So that's kind of
like what Grant said about Kittle too. Like Bosa's never had an elite edge rusher opposite of him throughout his career. And so he's the one who's getting double teamed and chipped and hit a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Still very good production.
Okay. Number 5. And again, I'm not putting too much weight on what someone did in 2023. I'm thinking about what they did last year and what I think they're going to do this year. So this is subjective, but number 5, Dominic Pooney.
Okay.
Dominic Pooney. I think
I had him higher on my list originally.
He was the 6th highest graded guard in football last year, according to Pro Football Focus. Yeah. Now, we've seen so many rookies have sophomore slumps, and he's only done it once, but I think he's a hell of a player. And I think if he continues on this track, he'll be a foundational player that they'll have to re-sign. You can't let this guy go. He's really good. Dominic Pooney, number 5.
All the offensive line experts nerded out at his film last year, and we saw it too. Pull blocks, getting out in space, athleticism, pass blocking. He helped out Jake Brendel, who really struggled at center a lot. Brendel was lucky to have Pooney to his right.
He helped out McKivitz too.
Yeah, that too.
Okay.
Yep.
He's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. That's my prediction. Number 6. This is going to really piss people. No, I don't know. Again, this is no shade on anyone else. I think this young player is really good. Renardo Green. Renardo Green had 12 PBUs last year. He played like 60% of the snaps. Lenore's great too, but this guy's bigger. He's, I don't know if he's faster, but I think he's got more potential. And I think he actually was playing at a higher level than Lenore down the stretch. Lenore, as good as he is still 5'10" and can get mossed. This guy is more built like Travarius Ward. So I would put him at 6. I would put Lenore at 7. I think those two corners are really freaking good. I think the Niners have no shade on anyone else. I think those corners are really good and would be good on any system, any team. It's not like just in a zone system or just with Robert Saleh. Those are really good starting cornerbacks. Number 8, I have Juwan Jennings. I think Juwan Jennings is like what he did last year was Brandon Ayuk in 2022. Yeah, he gets schemed open, but he was the 15th highest graded wide receiver of football last year. He's tough. Wow. He blocks. He's one of the best contested catch guys in the league. And again, I think he could produce on any team the way he produces. He's just not fast. But yeah, he's in his prime. And then 9, I would put Purdy. And I would put him at 9 just because, like, right in the Juwan Jennings. I think him and Juwan Jennings are like kind of similar. 7th round picks. Like, their weaknesses are so apparent. And yet they've found what their premium competitors, their leaders. They're off the charts in all the intangibles, but they're always going to be held back a little bit by their own weaknesses. So with Purdy, I think we saw those last year. When you take Christian McCaffrey out of the equation, his production is very Jimmy Garoppolo-esque. The way they get to the production is different. They're different players, but at the end of the day, like, his numbers last year were almost exactly Jimmy G's numbers from 2021. And I'm starting to look back at Brock's 2023 season as maybe the outlier. Like, maybe all that happened Brock's 2023, Ayuk's 2023. Maybe that's because freaking Christian McCaffrey was the best player in football that year, and the Niners haven't had a guy like that. Maybe I'm overreacting. I haven't even put Christian McCaffrey on my top 10 list yet, and I'm not going to. Number 10, I'm putting Ricky Pearsall. I think that dude is the most explosive player on the offense right now and is going to be their leader in receiving yards this year. I'm not putting Christian on the list because I think he's washed, and I could be wrong. But he took his time coming back last year. He was cautious. He was safe, and he was bad. 4 yards a carry, five missed tackles forced. He didn't reach 18 miles an hour in a single game. I mean, maybe having a full offseason this year will change that, or maybe he's just old. I don't have high hopes for Christian McCaffrey. I think a lot of times when running backs fall off, they fall off quick, and it's they don't get it back. So that's my list. I hope I'm wrong for the sake of the Niners, because that's pretty bleak.
Man,
is this more of like a projection list?
Yes.
Because I like the idea that Ricky is going to be so important.
He hasn't proven it, but I think he's going to have a big year. I do.
Okay.
Ended the season very strong. The Detroit game, he was really good, and
he's better
had
than
over
Jennings
100 receiving yards. The contested catch against Brian Branch, who's one of the top DBs in the game, was impressive. And then week 18, his numbers weren't as good, but against the Cardinals, he had another really tough
Josh Dobbs
for a touchdown. No, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the contested catches that he had the last couple weeks for touchdowns were like really impressive plays that are not easy. And we see receivers drop those passes all the time. And so the pop plays, the explosive plays that Pearsall had last year, I think about the end around for 40 against the Cowboys, what he did against Detroit, what he did against Arizona.
Ayuk couldn't have done that. The end around for 40. Ayuk's not that explosive. He's more explosive than Ayuk. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I like Ricky Pearsall.
The short area quickness and burst with like the route running and the footwork backs up that explosiveness, I think. Mm-hmm. And also the 2023 Niners team, it's going to be one of the best teams that never won a Super Bowl that should have. Debo is over 1,000 all-purpose. A lot of people don't realize that. McCaffrey went over 2,000 all-purpose. Kittle was a first-team All-Pro, over 1,000 receiving yards, and Ayuk was over 1,000 receiving yards too. And McCaffrey and Purdy were both top 5.
Do you guys remember this? Like, before the Niners lost that Super Bowl, people were talking like, is this the best Niners team of all time?
Yeah.
Is it?
There
Are
was
they better
that.
than the
They were
'94 Niners?
comparing it
Like,
to, like 94
no.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was the bar that they set for themselves, and that's why the Eagles eviscerating that Chiefs team in the Super Bowl was so devastating to the Niners. I think because the Niners
It proved you could
should
do
have
it.
been able to do that to the Chiefs as well. The
That's why
Chiefs were not that good.
It bothers me when fans are like, the officials kept the Niners from winning that game. It's like, okay, think about what happened in that game. They were going to score on the first drive. McCaffrey fumbled.
Yep.
They had a blocked extra point. They had a muffed punt. They didn't block Chris Jones on the biggest play of the game. And that's like only 4 of the mishaps that they had in a game that is decided on the margins in the Super Bowl against Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs. You can't shoot yourselves in the foot that many times. And when you do, oftentimes you always lose.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Wait,
let's
really quick,
just.
'cause
Oh, go ahead.
something that I liked, a point that you made while you were talking about your list, Grant. The Lenore, he would be good in any system. He's done great through multiple different D coordinators. That's
He's a really good
underrated.
player.
Because when we look
That's
at the
why I
offense,
put him
we
above
go,
Jennings, because like I feel like sometimes the Niners' offensive weapons are like boosted by Kyle. Like he gets them open, he gives them opportunities to get yards after the catch, and they wouldn't necessarily get like
Lenore
the
did
same
this with-
production on other teams. But Lenore would do this on any team, and it's not like he's being boosted up by an incredible front
Nick
seven.
Sorensen, Steve
No.
Wilkes, like it didn't matter. Everyone else, it's like, oh, okay. Even with Nick Bosa, it's like Robert Saleh is going to come back, and that's going to really help. But wow, how interesting! I didn't think how impressive it is that they've changed defensive coordinators 3 times now, and Lenore has stood out every single year.
But then when I
only
think
got
about like
better.
Lenore versus Jennings one-on-one, I feel like Jennings has the advantage just because he's 5 inches taller than Lenore. Like that's a tough matchup for Lenore. But I don't. Maybe that's not a way to
Yeah, like
rank
maybe
them
his
against each
physical
other.
skill sets.
Yeah, I would take Jennings one-on-one in that matchup. As much as I love Lenore.
I really like the Renardo Green pool. First of all, Saleh said he's one of the best players on the team. You mentioned he was 11th in
heard that.
pass breakups. He was
Yep.
top 25 in passes defended, which is a slightly different stat than pass breakups. And he put up those numbers despite only starting 7 games. So
He
that's
played
like a
63%
huge
of the
breakout
snaps.
candidate for 2025. Yep.
12 pass breakups according to PFF and 63% of the snaps. Like this is a guy who could, I don't know. I mean, Travarius Ward led the league in pass breakups in 2023. That seems like this guy's skill set.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. Let's do some prize picks before the Knicks and the Pacers play tonight. Remember, it's a more or less game. We don't ever use the O or the U words here. God forbid. Who do you guys like tonight? Brunson, Hart, McConnell, Halliburton?
I like McConnell more than 8 points.
Thank you so much. More than 8? You think he's good for more than 8?
Sponsor of the 49ers report as well. So we know the verbiage here.
You're a vet. Yeah, I think more is 8. That's a good one. That's a veteran call. Ashley, what do you like? What's the action you like here?
I want to do Brunson.
Brunson. Okay. 30 points. That's a lot. In the last game, he had 23.
Can we do less?
Less. Hating. Are you a Brunson hater?
No, I like him, but that's a lot.
That's true. I agree with that. All right. Your turn. Chase.
Let's go.
I like betting against the Timberwolves, but that's
What's
not
We
the
what
don't
we're
bet
doing.
here. We just play.
combined?
We were playing.
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 Scroll up for the Siakam combined. I like how active he is. Go up.
Siakam combined. Can I? No, can't do that. It's only on the.
Not the
okay, where we at?
points. Okay.
Here. Nope.
2-pointers attempted. I don't like that.
You don't like that? He's good for it.
What about Karl Anthony Towns?
He's got 3 names. How about Karl Anthony Towns?
I saw him
More
down
than
there
3
bottom
names.
left.
Is that a problem?
22? What do you think,
More.
Ashley? More?
He was
like
the
the
game 3
conviction with
hero
which you said that.
for New York.
Okay. Let's see if we can get some.
Giants.
Hold on. Siakam. There you go. 29.5 points, rebounds, and assists. You want that one?
I like the more.
The more. Okay. I think that's good for tonight's game. We got
What
McConnell,
about
Brunson.
the Giants pick?
The Giants?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we got. Giants. Casey Schmidt, Heliot Ramos, Jung Hoo Lee. Yes,
How
Jung
about
Hoo
Boogie?
Lee.
I want John
He,
Lee.
okay. All right. Okay. All right. Are they playing right now? They're playing
Against
right now.
Detroit.
Okay, so can we play with them? Do you like
Sure.
the
Why don't we do that one?
is
1.5
it
hits? More. Yeah.
more
All
than
we
point
can do
five?
is more at this point for whatever reason. Does that
More.
sound good to you?
I believe in him.
You believe? I believe in him
JHL.
too.
Still.
There it is. Smith in the lineup. What's the problem? There we go. There you go. Use promo code CONE, play 5, get 50 instantly. Thank you for playing along with us. Okay, let's do some realistic expectations for the team heading into OTAs, starting with the defense. It was 8th in yards allowed last year, surprisingly. 29th in points allowed. They gutted the defense, brought in new defensive coordinators, Robert Saleh. Hella rookie starting. What do you think the realistic expectation is for this defense in 2025?
I just think this defense is going to drastically improve just because of scheme and coaching alone.
Yeah.
And I also think it's realistic that 5 rookies start because I think they're the best players for those positions. And I just think that quality coaching can do a lot for you. It can help develop younger players. It can help players get back on track like a Jair Brown. It can put players in a position to succeed. And I just think we're going to find out that Nick Sorensen was horrendous and horrible as a DC, whereas Robert Saleh is one of the best in the NFL. And they end up being better against the run because all of the rookies have a track record of stopping the run. They're going to be better on 3rd down, 4th down, and in the red zone. And just for those reasons, I think it's realistic to say that the Niners defense is going to improve. And a lot of that is just because of the Saleh influence.
It was well reasoned.
I agree. I think that if they were able to be, what was the stat about 8, Grant? They were 8th in yards.
Oh, yeah. They gave up the 8th
yards.
fewest yards, but they also gave up the 4th most points. It's kind of
Okay.
weird.
I think that also, I mean, to be fair, how much does the offense score and how much can the defense rest? Because a lot of times last year, the defense would hold the other team to like under 16 points all the way up until the 4th quarter and then kind of crumble, which
Hmm.
maybe was partially on coaching, as Shay said, but also could be because half the time I felt like people couldn't catch their breath out there. They were just constantly on the field trying to stop the other team. Part of that will be improved with younger guys who have more stamina, and part of that should be improved by coaching. And then also, it's going to be on the offense to actually give the defense a break. If they were able to give up the 8th least yards, is that how you said it, in the
8th
NFL
fewest.
last year?
Yeah.
Then I think that they should be at least in the 5th of that. And I think they should drastically improve. I know that a lot of the young guys, it's going to take time. If you look at the Rams, they were a bottom 26 defense going for the first half of last year, going into their bye week. But then after they made a huge impact, they made a huge acceleration as their guys kind of grew into shape through playing the season. And they
That's good
actually were
knowledge.
playing their best football
Yeah.
in the postseason. And so I think that that would be something we can, look at the Rams as a blueprint for that. And that's kind of the trajectory that I think this 49ers defense is going to go into. Might take a couple weeks for the young guys to get into shape and to really understand their positions on this team, but I don't think it's going to take a full year. I think we're going to start to see drastic improvement by week 5. And then,
Yeah, I
continuously
actually
as the
agree. I
season
think
goes on.
by the end of the season, they might have the best defense in the division. Like, let's say, like, to me, I was tempted to put Michael Williams in my top 10, but I figured that'd be ridiculous. But like, I really think he's going to have a really good rookie year. And I wouldn't be surprised if by next year he's 5th on our top 5 list or 4th after Bosa, depending on where Trent Williams is at. I mean, this guy could have a huge impact on this defense, considering all the one-on-ones he's going to get and what he can do for the Niners run defense. They already have 2 really good corners. They already have Bosa and Warner. Mustafa's gonna be good when he comes back. I think he was good last year. So that's what, 5 players? And if a few of these other rookies do well with Robert Saleh's coaching, I think this defense should be really good by the end of the year. I agree. Very high expectations. I don't know what it's going to look like in September and October, but by the end of the year, it should be tough. What about the offense, though? It's like the opposite of the defense. The defense is young and completely renovated, a bunch of new starters. The offense is essentially the same core they've had for a long time, minus Debo, and they're trying to keep it together. Some guys who were out last year with injury. What do you expect from this offense? They were 4th in terms of yards gained last year, but only 13th in points scored.
They could not score in the red zone last year.
They had a tough time.
Sorry, go ahead, Chase.
No, if you're about to go on a rant, floor is yours.
It'll be interesting. I think Grant, if you're correct and Ricky is playing like a top, 10 player on this football team, which by the way, he should be. I often like when I'm thinking about Ricky, I'm like, oh, let's not overstate expectations. And then I'm like, wait, he was a 1st-round draft pick. Why do I think that he should
ran a
be a
4.4? He's like a 40-inch vert. He's a hell of an athlete.
And that could add really necessary speed to this team that the 49ers need. If they can start throwing the ball to Kittle more, if Ricky does take a step of improvement, I think that this team could be very, very good. I think they kind of found a key when they started going away from Debo last year, but they just didn't commit to that decision because then he would get upset. And it felt like Kyle was like trying to make sure that he didn't go on Twitter rants or something, or maybe save their friendship. I don't really understand what was going on. But when they didn't force feed Debo the ball at the end of the season last year, not just talking about the last 3 games, but maybe the last like 6 or so games, thinking from that Bears game on, they started targeting George Kittle in the red zone more. And they weren't force feeding Debo. And then in the very end of the season, they got Ricky involved in the same position that Debo was in. And you actually saw their offense improve quite a lot. They were just already out of the playoff race. Now, they were still not maybe the explosive offense we have come to expect because they were missing Christian McCaffrey, and so they didn't have the running element. But I think if they can see, if this Jordan James guy really is an Elijah Mitchell prototype, and then they get, Luke Farrell blocking more, and they actually utilize Kittle more as a pass catcher, and he can be a star in that element. It could be a really explosive offense. Like we've seen the 49ers have an explosive offense. We know they can get down the field. The hump that they have to overcome is, okay, once you're in the 5-yard line, can you actually put the ball in the end zone? They had 2 issues. 1, they couldn't score a touchdown to save their life. And then 2, when they weren't scoring touchdowns, then their kicker wasn't making field goals. So they were burning all this clock, walking all the way down the field, and then just not walking away with no points and giving the other team.
They also committed 27 turnovers last year. There was that too.
So
a lot of penalties.
Brock Purdy,
as well.
are you going to take care of the football? Kyle Shanahan, are you going to scheme your offense to actually score in the end zone? And then I know, it's no one comes to talk about kickers, but are you going to have a kicker that's not a head case? I don't care how talented he is in practice. If the 49ers, which to be fair, they should be able to score a touchdown. That's on them. But if you're in a situation where they can't, you need to have a kicker that's reliable. Like when we're talking about 2023, Chase, you were saying what an incredible team. And we go back, like they also had a kicker that was money for years. They had a kicker that they could rely on. So lot of improvements needed in the offense, but I can see a scenario where those improvements do happen and they're back to being an explosive offense.
Yeah. Couple of things that come to mind too with what Ashley said and what we were talking about earlier about somehow the Niners being 8th in yards allowed, but 28th in points allowed. One is what Ashley just said. The Niners offense would drive down the field. They had no problem moving the ball. Once they got inside the red zone, they couldn't score. And then when they did have to trot out the field goal unit, Jake Moody would always miss. And so with the offense controlling the ball a lot, the defense wasn't on the field that much. And so that helped them not give up that many yards. Another thing too, opposing offenses had a lot of short fields. Why? Because this Niners special teams unit was a fucking joke.
That's true.
So you expect the special teams unit to be a little bit better, and that'll help put this defense in a better position to succeed. And so I think this Niners team in its entirety as a whole is going to improve just on the basis of them playing more complementary football. And so I don't know if you guys have anything to respond to that. If not, I'll talk about the offense, but those are some things that came to mind as I'm kind of listening to you guys talk.
No, I want to hear what your expectations are for the offense.
Okay. So I think there's something to be said for the Niners being recharged and refreshed. I thought last year they looked and played like a team that was checked out and mentally and physically fatigued. I think a big reason for that, human nature. They made it to 4 NFC championship games and 2 Super Bowls in 5 years. And so they played a lot of ball deep into the calendar year, which resulted in shorter off seasons. And they were becoming an older team that played a physical brand of ball. And so I just think they were worn out last year. And what Kyle Shanahan said at the NFL owners meetings, he said it and I was like, interesting. He said, I'm as excited and as like refreshed as I am for this year as I've been in a really long time. What did Brock Purdy say last week? We're in the building. We're feeling charged up and ready to go. And I just think that that is a thing with this Niners team. And so I think that's going to help Shanahan have a better year because he coached terribly last year, in my opinion, compared to the expectations that we have of him and what he's done in the past as one of the top offensive coaches in the NFL. So I think he bounces back. If the head coach bounces back, what's that?
He sort of set the tone for their malaise. It was almost his malaise.
Yeah.
And he was not creative last year. I feel like multiple times you would just be like, wow, you have no Debo went out, Christian McCaffrey went out, and you have no idea what to do now. Like your hands are tied.
He couldn't adjust. He had a tough time.
Yeah.
In the past, he was someone who could adjust. And like I said with the Elijah Mitchell, it's like, wow, you made a star out of the guy who's on the Dolphins now, Grant. And
Mostert.
Yeah. He used to be able to I'm just agreeing with you, Chase. Like, you used to see creativity in Kyle's offense, and it was lacking last year for whatever reason. You didn't see him. He could not adjust, at least in game.
Well, it's also funny how Kyle Juszczyk said last year, oh, everybody thinks there's this dark cloud and weird vibe around our team. He said this in training camp. There was, and it translated to the entire season. Yeah. And the contract drama, I think, caused some of that malaise, the aforementioned malaise that you guys were talking about. It carried over all year. This was a team that lacked rhythm. It lacked juice. It lacked consistency. And I think the offensive struggles, part of that was because McCaffrey was out. Brandon Ayuk was holding out. Trent Williams was holding out. There were injuries on that side of the ball. So if health is on their side, no contract drama, Kyle Shanahan bounces back. I think the head coach helps the quarterback bounce back a little bit. The one thing I worry about is this offensive line. That's something that they just continue to neglect and ignore. And if Brock Purdy weren't so mobile, I think that we would see the offensive line numbers be even worse than they actually are. I know Kyle Shanahan thinks that he can scheme around it. Sometimes he can. But against elite opponents, you can't always do that. That's why they've struggled against good defensive lines in the playoffs. But if the offensive line can at least hold up, and if you don't have injuries all across the offensive side of the football, I do think that the Niners can improve and be better. Christian McCaffrey's health, Trent Williams' health is going to play a big role in that. Ricky Pearsall is going to have to take a leap forward. I think you might need a little bit of something from Jacob Cowing. You got to be better in the red zone. You have to be better on third down. But those are also kind of like fluky numbers that I think happened last year, that if you look at Shanahan's track record, they don't repeat themselves year in and year out. And so I do think with all of the extracurricular baggage stuff that happened last year, I just don't see how that carries over into 2025. Plus, the easier schedule, I think, is going to help them out a lot too.
I feel like the Niners offense is kind of almost easy to project because Kyle's been here for 8 years. It's a lot of the same players who have been here for 8 years. Like 2019 with Jimmy, 2021, 2022, 2024. It was all kind of the same. I mean, it wasn't great, but they ranked very high in yards gained. What was really different, an outlier, was the end of 2022 and all of 2023. And I think when Brock Purdy first started playing, we looked at him as like, man, he's so much better than Jimmy, because now when they're in the red zone, they're scoring touchdowns. And when Jimmy was down there, they weren't scoring so many touchdowns. But now I feel like maybe in retrospect, was it Brock or was it Christian? Because when you took Christian out of the equation last year, all of a sudden they had the same red zone issues they had with Jimmy. So if Christian can come back and be 2023 Christian, then the offense will be like that. But I don't expect that anymore. He's 29. He wasn't good last year. And I don't think he was like Dre Greenlaw rushed back from injury last year. He wasn't 100%. Christian did not rush back from injury. He went to freaking Germany first, waited until he really felt it was safe, played, and just wasn't quite that good anymore. So I feel like it's going to be a lot like we saw last year, where they move the ball a lot and they don't have the offensive line to really dictate what they want to do on offense. They have to be complementary, but the defense might take a few months to become dominant, and they turn the ball over more than they should. That's kind of what I expect from this offense. It's going to look good on paper. The EPA per play might be really high, but it's not going to be 2023 again. They're not going to be scoring 30 plus points per game again. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, maybe Christian changes that.
Which is why it's insane they continue to have the offensive line strategy that they have, because if you just had a better offensive line, it helps make up for a lot of your other deficiencies. You already have a great play caller and play designer in Kyle Shanahan. I don't think anybody is going to disagree that he's really smart in that regard. But sometimes he lacks in game management. Sometimes he can lack in the red zone. Sometimes Brock Purdy can struggle in certain areas. If you just have a better offensive line and you can just win at the point of attack, it helps protect Purdy, both with rhythm throws, but also him making plays out of structure. With your running scheme and your running concepts, imagine how much better it could be if you just could protect and block a little bit better. And that's something that the Eagles have grasped, and that's why they're the class of the league right now. And it's something that the Niners just continue to not really hone in on. And I'm not sure if it's because Shanahan has a receiver background, Lynch has the safety background, but it just really boggles my mind, because they could go from being like very good to sometimes dominant if you pair a good offensive line with the scheme, the play calling, and the talent. Anyway.
Let me ask you this real quick. How good would Jalen Hurts be if you changed nothing about the Eagles except you swapped out their offensive line for the Niners offensive line?
Be running for his life. He's one of the top deep ball throwers in the NFL. You take the deep ball away, he's not the same guy. If he doesn't have the same protection, he doesn't have the deep ball. You know what I mean?
So,
and he's a really good runner, but he doesn't have the speed of Lamar. He doesn't have even like some of the short area quickness that Brock Purdy has, and like that Tony Romo patented move where he kind of senses that backside pressure and he just like twirls out. Like Jalen Hurts doesn't have that to his game. So if the offensive line was worse, the run game's impacted, the pass game is impacted, and yeah, he doesn't have as much success as what he's been able to have.
All right, we're going into overtime a little bit. We're going to go quick. David Kendall Jr. says, Grant and Chase on the podcast. Hell yeah, I love listening to both you guys.
Thank you,
and Ashley, too. Marcus Ralph says, Ashley is cooking. Complimentary offense is needed. All right, before we get out of here, what are your realistic expectations for Brock in 2025?
I think he bounces back. And not having to worry about the contract drama. As I noted, better coaching. I just don't see how the injury rate, number 2 most injured offense in the NFL last year, repeats itself again. I think continuity with some of the younger players like Pearsall and Cowing, that helps. One thing about the offense too, when the Niners have had to force feed Debo, the offense becomes worse. Debo's not on the team anymore. So I think it's a more natural, organic approach to distributing the football. And I think that bodes well for Purdy, because he's at his best when he has to play point guard. And so I think he learns a little bit from some of the dumb decisions that he made late in games last year. He felt the pressure of needing to carry the team and make the big play when we all know he can't play hero ball. That's not his game. And so I think he learns from that. I think better defense and special teams and the Niners playing better complementary football doesn't put him in a position where he has to play that hero ball. And I just think it results in better play for Brock. And then I think experience is important. Like, he played a lot in college, but this is going to be his third full season as a starting quarterback in this league. And I think experience will help him do wonders. And he doesn't have to worry about like the contract drama any longer. And I thought last year at times he played a little bit tight, perhaps because of that.
He even
Chase,
mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the argument you just made. And I tend to be like, I try to be objective, but I tend to be a fan and I want the 49ers to do well. And therefore I want Brock Purdy to have a bounce back season. So when you're making your argument, I'm like, these are excellent points. Yes, it's like feeding the voice in my head that wants to be positive. But I couldn't help but think 10 seconds prior, we were talking about the offensive line and how poorly Jalen Hurts would do if you switched out the offensive line on the Eagles. And I don't know, is this offensive line even as good as it was last year? I guess if Trent Williams is healthy and he's there consistently, you would say, yeah, definitely.
Just wait until you see Connor Colby do his thing, Ashley. Just freaking wait.
I'm just saying they lost. Was Aaron Banks the best? Who knows? I know a lot of people are excited about Ben Bartch. He played really well for one game, but he also got injured multiple times and played one game. So I don't know, like, if we can depend on him. And I'm open to being wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I do worry. Can his interception rate change if he's continuously running for his life next year? Like, even if Chris McCaffrey is back, maybe they'll be running the ball more. But I can just see so many scenarios where Brock Purdy is running to the side, trying to escape something, but then he has to throw the ball out of bounds. Or he thinks he sees Ricky Pearsall open, but doesn't see the linebacker because he's on the run, trying not to get tackled from a guy behind him. So much is going to depend on if that offensive line gives Brock Purdy a chance, in my opinion, because what were the qualities during that year where he was in the MVP race? People said his decision making, his accuracy. He didn't have the time to make accurate, good decisions when the pocket was immediately collapsing. And then we saw what happens to a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, I think of Sam Darnold, who just had a great year with the Vikings, but then all the way before that in his career, it's like he had so many times where the offensive line broke down that he started anticipating it even when it wasn't happening. So I know, like, there's people on Twitter that will say, well, look, Brock Purdy's actually responsible for this. The offensive line wasn't breaking down in this particular play, and he starts bailing out. And what I would say is, well, because the offensive line is not consistently good, Brock Purdy last year started anticipating that it was going to go wrong. And sometimes it would, but sometimes it wouldn't. And he was making wrong decisions. So I think so much of projecting Brock Purdy is projecting the offensive line. Now, Chase, you made an excellent argument for him getting better. And also just under Kyle, there seems to be a very up and down trajectory with his offense and with his quarterbacks. So going off of just the history of that, you would say, okay, they had a down year last year. The offense and therefore the quarterback is probably going to be better this year. They're going against a lot weaker schedule outside of their division, at least. So yes, could I talk myself into being positive and into saying that Brock Purdy could be more like his MVP year or MVP, race year than last year? Yes. But could I also see a situation where he's, in the same situation as last year where he can't live up to that because he's just trying to keep plays alive? I can see that. Maybe where you could see the progression is in that the red zone, less picks in that scenario. Like, if you can get all the way down there, can you protect the football? Can you get the football to George Kittle? Does that make sense what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be a downer.
Look, even the best quarterbacks can't overcome bad offensive line play. Look no further than Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl in February. Offensive line sucked. He had no chance. He was seeing ghosts, and then he turned it over 3 times because he was feeling that pressure. And so a lot of the Niners' success offensively and Brock Purdy's success offensively, I think, does rely and hinges on the offensive line, which is, again, why it just makes no sense to me that this organization, in a game where games are decided at the point of attack, they don't prioritize the offensive line enough.
There's one more big factor too, and Ashley brought it up earlier. I'm surprised you didn't come back to it because you said, Kyle he wasn't very creative last year. To me, like Kyle, he boosts Brock, but he also limits Brock because Brock can't audible. I mean, Brock has no ownership of the offense. It's all Kyle. So either what Kyle's calling works or it doesn't. And I mean, I think we've seen with Kyle, like his quarterback's going to put up the same numbers essentially no matter who it is. And Brock, he gives you this scrambling element that's great, and that's outside of structure. We love that. But for Brock to play better this year, one, Christian has to be great again, or Kyle has to be way better than he was last year and have like this evolution where he's, Kyle 2.0 and is going against tendency and doing new things. Haven't seen that from him in a while. I really feel like he hasn't had many new ideas since 2019, since he really got this rolling. His big new addition was trading for Christian McCaffrey, one of the best moves he ever made, the Niners ever made. It really worked out. But I'd love to know if he has a wrinkle or two, or if this offense has kind of been figured out in the sense that people know tendencies. I mean, he's been doing this for so long.
You have to adapt and evolve, man. And part of the reason why I thought Shanahan struggled last year was that the offense seemed vanilla. He didn't really adapt and evolve and make a lot of changes. And again, it's hard when your personnel is changing every single week, but that's what you pay coaches to do, to come up with new creative ideas, to put players in a position to succeed, to maximize the players on the roster. And I thought Shanahan, he didn't do a good enough job of that last year. And frankly, toward the end of the year, I thought everybody on that team was checked out. And that starts with the head coach.
And it was funny, they have this disaster of a season, and then they give Brock Purdy a huge extension. So it's clear the owners didn't hold him responsible for the 6-11 season. I mean, I'd have to think they held Kyle responsible because he didn't get an extension. So a lot of pressure on him. I mean, I think Brock Purdy's, if he struggles this year, could look bad for Brock, but it could be even worse for Kyle because maybe the owners say, well, maybe it's time to find someone else because we believe in Brock. That's why we gave him so much money. Anyway,
I said I like to be positive. And Chase made a great point, but then I was being negative about the offensive line. Your guys' conversation just made me feel positive again because you said, Grant, the offense has started to be predictable. I agree. What did Robert Saleh just say in his first interview that he had back with the 49ers? He likes to predict what offenses are going to do, not just 1, but 2 years in advance. Having Robert Saleh back, if Kyle is open to it, and I don't know, because I do know Kyle likes to make his own calls and doesn't like a ton of, feedback, but he's worked with Robert Saleh before. I think there might be more openness to listening to Robert Saleh than there could be other coaches. Maybe Robert Saleh helps Kyle see the weaknesses or see the predictability, and therefore that having Robert Saleh not only improves our defense but improves our offense by giving Kyle some insight into, hey, this is how defensive coordinators around the league are starting to predict what you're doing. This is the tendencies they're seeing. When you line up like this, this is what they know to do. And I'm going to tell you this and give you this heads up, and we can work on it all off season. I'm back to thinking the offense is going to be good.
I love it. That was quite a ride. Ashley, Chase, thank you guys so much for your time today. Everyone, you got like 1,500 people watching. I appreciate it. We'll do this again sometime soon. In 2 minutes, got the 4-man front right here. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. Yeah.